What is the worst case of I know better than my doctor you've ever heard of? Working at a supplement store years ago, I had a woman come in asking about vitamin B17. She said her daughter had cancer and was taking her off of chemo despite her doctors pleading with her not to. Some friend of hers claimed B17 was a miracle vitamin they don't want you to know about and can cure just about anything. I told her she should listen to her doctors. She told me to frick off. For those who don't know, vitamin B17 isn't a vitamin. It's a compound called amygdalin, and eating it will give you cyanide poisoning. I'm a nurse. My patient's family member was telling everyone that the doctor was an idiot because, and I quote, "What the frick do the kidneys have to do with the bladder? SMH." I had some parents trip out when their kid with a sore throat was later found to also have an ear infection. How did he come in with one infection and end up with another? They went on and on about the terrible food we serve and how dirty the hospital must be, not realizing an infection in the throat has a direct pathway to reach the ear. Old man I knew always had a band-aid on his nose. He had a cancerous growth on it and he would cut it off himself. Would always say, "All the doc will do is cut it off. I can do that myself and save $200. Guess who died when the cancer spread elsewhere? Some cancers will be triggered to grow rapidly and out of control if they aren't completely removed. About 15 years ago, before the whole gluten-free trend, I worked with a guy who was a vegetarian. We worked side by side, just the two of us, and got along really well. One day, I got curious and asked what led to his vegetarianism. He told me he had been having some health problems and went to see the doctor. Doc ran some tests and told my friend that he should cut wheat out of his diet. This guy says, "Well, that doesn't sound right. He must have meant meat instead of wheat." Double quote. A friend of mine had stage 4 cancer. She went through chemo for over a year, and they told her that they would let her take a break. Well, when they looked at the cancer, it hadn't shrunk as much as they'd have liked, so they told her that she couldn't take a break. She started posting on Facebook about these organic green juice cleanses that someone had messaged her about. I was at her bedside begging her to keep doing the chemo. I told her that she could do the juice cleanses if she thought they'd help, but not to stop the chemo. She responded, "But they won't work if I don't stop the chemo. That's poison in your body. I know my body, and it's going to heal it." She wound up entering hospice on her 30th birthday and passing about a month later. I'd love to find who peddled that balls to her and punch them right in their freaking mouth. Probably some MLM balls. They need to be ended. I met someone who insists that insulin makes their blood sugar get higher, so they don't take it. They also don't take to having all their toes or apparently the whole left foot. But hey, live and let die. Here's your daily kick to the rubber parts. My father was a stubborn bastard and was adamant about not following doctor's orders. Long-time smoker, drinker, etc. So dear old father goes in and has a mole excised from his penis. Oh, biopsy comes back and it's not malignant. Great. Problem: he didn't follow the doctor's order on how to take care of it after the fact. Gangrene. Yep, they lopped it off. I only found out about that in my late teens. It was a mind-shattering reveal from my mother and older sister. In many ways this wins the thread. I have a ton of these, but most recently had a teen patient who had lost speech for a couple days. They got better, and when I saw them again with their mom, I went over the tests we had done and started discussing some of the possible causes. Mom interrupted me and said, "Don't say anything else. I'm a firm believer that if you don't tell someone their diagnosis, they can just heal on their own." Literally didn't want me to tell her anything because she thought saying words out loud would give her kid diseases. Oh, same day I had a lady tell me that she was refusing treatment because she read a study where a guy treated hundreds and hundreds of patients with normal saline and had a 100% success rate. Yeah, okay lady. I know someone with a master's degree who believes her friend the massage therapist cures people with AIDS. Seriously, massages, teas, enemas and crystals and meditation. No more AIDS. I facepalmed so hard I nearly broke my nose. My sister refused a surgery that would have removed her uterus, cervix, and part of her bowel or bladder, I forget, thus getting rid of her cervical cancer because what man would love me this way? She left behind 4 kids under the age of 18. The youngest being 4. That's really freaking sad. I manage social media for a public health agency. All our immunization vaccine related posts have been getting swarmed by anti-vaxxers lately. No medical training and anecdotal evidence and cherry-picked data equals we know better than science. They've now branched out to hit some of our other posts too. Breastfeeding promotion, cancer, HPV, etc. And it's getting to the point where I just want to give up. Which I guess is their goal, because they certainly aren't going to sway anyone with their dozens of long-winded comments on a single post. You fricking keep up the good fight and don't let up. With all the disinformation spreading about you are playing a big part in helping to shine a light through the BS and educating the upcoming generations. I had a patient with stage 2 bladder cancer, young man, in his 40s. He needed to have his bladder removed but he didn't want to. Instead, he had the medicinal healer at the commune he lived in do some herbal therapies and dietary adjustment. He was dead within a year, from a fairly curable disease. This story is pretty common. I've had another patient go to Mexico for non-FDA approved treatments. They don't usually do very well and they usually regret it. I have to bite my tongue when I see them back with much worse disease. Friend of mine sees way too many of these cases on a daily basis. But the worst one so far has to be this lady whose child was born premature, so her baby was rather small to begin with. The doctors do their usual thing, gives her advice on childcare and everything, and she comes in a week later saying her kid was sick, not sure why. Friend was appalled to find out that her baby had barely put on any weight since birth, and immediately asked her what in the world had she been feeding the kid. Woman says, "Oh, I figured since he was so tiny, he didn't need to eat that much. So I've been sticking to about an ounce of milk per meal." Seriously, woman. I don't know how the child's doing now but I can only hope he is well. A family with 7 kids, the oldest was barely 18 and the youngest 2. Their father died of cancer, didn't do chemo or anything. Then their mother got cancer and decided essential oils would cure it. Left all of the kids behind to basically be raised by their sister or split up. My mother believes that if you make food from scratch then it's healthier for you. For instance, she thinks that making a chocolate cake from scratch, including milling her own flour, is a healthier alternative to a store-bought cake with identical ingredients. She is diabetic. Her doctors have said in as many ways as they can think of that she has to reduce her carb intake, and what my mother thinks is, gosh, maybe I should grow the sugarcane myself instead of buying sugar at the store and my blood work will finally be in the normal range. Her liver and pancreas have failed multiple times. Each time, the doctors managed to restore organ function by restricting her carb intake. They explain that she has to continue to follow a low-carb diet at home. She does not, because she's convinced that she's already on a healthy diet. Rinse and repeat. My friend is treating her Lyme disease by going to a chiropractor, using essential oils, and getting massages, obviously against her doctor's advice. My mom tans in tanning beds constantly to the point where she looks like the outside of a baked potato. I told her one day she should stop because she can get skin cancer, and she told me that it's not possible with tanning beds. Worked for an ophthalmologist and had 2 distinct idiots that fit this category. The first one claimed she no longer had glaucoma. She had prayed it away. Her eye-op begged to differ. The other was scheduled for cataract surgery and he came in for his pre-op appointment, only to tell us he had spoken with God, and God told him he didn't need surgery. I told the doctor and she said sure, cancel it. I don't feel like arguing with God today. Had a patient last month who was 20/200 in his better seeing eye from giant cataracts and decided he didn't want cataract surgery because I prayed to God to give my sight back and I know he will. I told him to come back in 6 months and that he was not allowed to drive because he was still driving but only during the day to be safe. I teach people on a daily basis how to use urinary catheters. You aren't supposed to reuse them, just use it once. Throw it away, and when you need to catheterize again, open a new one. That's because using a non-sterile catheter can cause urinary tract infections and a host of all kinds of other problems. The doctor will send us a script for how many per day the patients need to use, and every single day, without fail, I'll have at least 1 or 2 tell me that their doctor is wrong and they only need 1 per day because they'll just wash it off and reuse it. Number. It literally says on the packaging not to do that. Your doctor said not to do that. I'm telling you not to do that. Why do you still think it's okay to do that? Money is the reason. They know they shouldn't. But a fixed income is a fixed income. Saw this on the news in Alabama a few years ago. Child got bitten by a timber rattlesnake. Mother said 911 wasn't necessary because she had a home remedy that her grandmother had passed down and all the child needed was to drink the remedy, take some ibuprofen, and lay down a few hours and she'd be good as new. The child dang near died. Mother lost all 3 of her children and was charged with felony neglect and endangering a child. I lived in Alabama for a while, and a lady swore to me that since her dog had been bitten by a copperhead once already, he was immune to snakebite now. If I didn't know she only had 2 kids, I would swear this was her. My friend was a bodybuilder, suffered a heart attack at a young age due to the fricked up status quo of the sport, and was ordered not to work out. He responded by finding a gym out of town and working out there. He had another heart attack while at that gym and never regained consciousness. I don't think he was arrogant, just addicted, but he left a very, very sad wife behind in addition to a huge group of friends, because he was as sweet as a big, swole, meathead could possibly be, and he was a little kid in need of a place to hide out from his insane home life when we met him, so he was our little baby, even though ended up having 100 pounds more muscle than the rest of us. I don't know why I'm writing this, but I loved him and writing feels better than not writing. Please take care of yourselves, and don't let anything so preventable happen to you. Couple that was super into fitness. Husband gets pneumonia. They decide the best treatment is specially formulated meal plans and vitamin shots. He died in his wife's arms during the middle of the night. That's how. Pneumonia is a nasty way to go. He should have gotten to the point where he simply wasn't breathing right. Breaths sound saturated and rattling, and he's unresponsive. Gray. In other words, obviously dying. How did she ignore that and not call an ambulance? My ex-mother-in-law would always have mixed leftover prescriptions of antibiotics in the medicine cabinet. She would only use medication until she started to feel better. Then she would shelve the rest. When she or someone in her family got sick, she would administer what she considered to be a good dose. I tried to explain to her that an antibiotic prescription only works if you follow the directions and take the whole bottle in the correct intervals. She replied, they only say that to get more money. She will be 70 soon and seems to get diagnosed with a new life-threatening disease every couple of years but still going strong. How to create antibiotic-resistant bacteria 101. Well, that whole thing with Steve Jobs is pretty high up that list. The worst thing is he had the kind of pancreatic cancer that's actually treatable. He had a chance to save himself that 98% of people with his disease don't, and he threw it away. My dad had a heart attack and went to the emergency room. While he was there he coded 8 times, his heart stopped and he had to be revived. He survived and they admitted him. He had a lot of damage. After a couple of weeks he checked himself out because them goddamned buttholes don't know what the heck they're talking about. He was found dead of heart failure about 3 weeks later. I'm sorry to hear this. This mentality is common where I grew up. A lot of older folks decided that they knew better than doctors who attended medical school for years and worked on patients for decades. Because the common sense they got on the bean farm apparently trumped the decades of experience their doctors had gained. Young bubbly mother I know was diagnosed with breast cancer. Tried alternative meds as promoted by her flaky girlfriends. Eventually she returned to the doctor who told her it was too advanced to do anything. She died leaving a little boy for her husband and extended family to care for. I still believe her friends contributed to her premature death. While talking with my OB and asking a ton of questions about my pregnancy, he told me a story. He was the on-call doc for a hospital and goes in after shift change from another on-call doc. Woman has been actively pushing for 3 hours. She has refused a C-section multiple times over because she's certain she can have the baby naturally. Turns out, baby was stuck and the pushing caused major brain damage to the baby. My doc tried to persuade her but she continued to refuse. Ended up having to do a C-section to retrieve the body. Women often have this overwhelming expectation of how their labor and birth is going to go, avoiding C-section and meds like the plague. The reality is, those things have saved many lives. Every person who has opted to treat a diagnosed condition with naturopathic medicine. I've diagnosed patients with cancer who have shunned modern treatments only to turn up months later with horrible stage IV disease asking for miracles. I'm all for taking herbal supplements to prevent disease, but when you're finally diagnosed with a condition, stroke, heart attack etc., you need the prescription stuff. In the NW, I frequently admit patients who seek emergent medical care for a condition only at discharge for them to say, yeah, I'm going to go see a naturopathic doctor. Frankly, I'm bewildered that it's not considered unethical or illegal to advertise statistically, scientifically unproven therapies to people. Had a guy keep coming in 3 times with a heart attack, we'd save him only for him to sign out of the hospital saying God will cure me, why bother coming then? I had to finally call his pastor to convince him to stay and get all the right treatment. You have been visited by the rare dream doggo. Comment sweet dreams doggo and you will have good dreams. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.